Caretower are one of the largest independent IT security integrators in the UK. The company was started in 1998 and we now have around 4,000 active clients. We are vendor agnostic because we don't believe that there are any silver bullets in IT security. We do, however, have an absolute focus on making sure that we propose the right solution for you. Where appropriate, we're quite happy to give you 2 or 3 options and explain the pros and cons of each so that you can make your mind up as to which is the right choice for your business. We turned over around £23 million last year. As a company, we're financially stable and the owners are continuing to invest back into the company and particularly into our Security Operations Centre so that we can offer a wider range of managed security services in future. We also pay very close attention to industry accreditations, primarily because they give us a way of benchmarking the quality of service that we provide to you. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, if you're going to provide managed security services to the UK's largest companies, you have to have the right accreditations, and that's why our SOC is approved to ISO 27001 and why we use an ITIL model for service delivery. For those of you in local government, our data centre is accredited up to Impact Level 4. What matters most, however, is that our SOC engineers are GIAC accredited, which means that they're trained in incident response and forensics. Now, while that might not mean a lot to you in managing your day-to-day IT operations, it's incredibly important when you're managing the security of some of the UK's largest companies. Let's now take a look at the state of cybersecurity as we see it today. In case you hadn't noticed, there's been a huge change in the nature of security threats since 2015. Gone are the days when the same malware was simply broadcast to millions of email addresses. These days, attacks are far more personalised. They're targeted to the individual organisation and sometimes down to the individual person, especially those who have access to personal or financial information. And this change of tactics has caused an explosion in the volume of new malware being discovered, with companies like McAfee now seeing 500,000 new malware samples every day. And they just can't keep up with that. What's more, the time to live of malware is now approaching the same amount of time as it takes to produce an updated pattern file. Now, one of the implications of that is that it really isn't a good idea anymore that you just rely on antivirus to protect your PCs and servers. But if anything, 2016 has been the year of ransomware. Earlier in the year, we saw Gloucestershire County Council reduced to pen and paper for 2 days when they were hit. But to be fair, we hear the same sort of stories from our customers on a weekly basis. The net result is that 65% of large organisations have experienced a breach in the past 12 months, and somewhere around 25% have reported multiple breaches. There is a view that says that there are only 2 types of organisation these days, those that know that they've been breached and those that just haven't found out yet. What we can say for certain, though, is that this exponential growth in advanced threats has taken everyone by surprise. And we'd have to hold our hands up and say that includes us. But what hasn't changed is that very few companies have really progressed past the same very labour-intensive and manual methods that they've been using for the past 5 years to deal with security breaches. And that really isn't helping, because you'll be able to deal with breaches a whole lot better if you start to join your defences together so that you can see the bigger security picture. What makes matters worse is that the damage from a breach can be done in minutes. All it needs is for you to be tricked into clicking on a link to a malicious website or opening a malicious document, and before you know it, your PC can be used to encrypt or extract your company's data. But it seems to be taking weeks or months for the breach to be discovered, and by that time, whoever carried out the attack will have got what they wanted and moved on, leaving you to clear up the mess. In fact, with the real high-profile breaches, it's usually been the bank or police who discover a breach when they're investigating credit card fraud, and the evidence trail has led back to the company where the breach took place. The $64,000 question is, of course, how does that impact on your business? And I think that there are 3 things that stand out when you look at the security reports today. Firstly, the cost of breaches to your organisation is increasing, and you need to find ways of reducing your potential loss. Secondly, it's taking too long to detect threats. The longer they stay on your network, the more damage they can do. And if it's taking months to detect a threat, then that's just too long. But to be able to reduce your exposure and react to threats better, you're going to need people with better security skills. Let's look at costs for a moment. The Ponemon Institute released their UK data breach study in June of this year, and they put the average cost of a data breach in large organisations in the UK as being £2.5 million. For SMBs, the cost of the worst security breaches was between £65,000 and £100,000, and that figure has grown by around 6% over the past 2 years. You can split these costs broadly into 3 areas. There's the cost of incident response and cleanup, which is essentially the cost of your IT team's time and any external consultancy costs. Then there's the cost of breach notification, and don't forget that if you don't know which of your customers' personal information has been accessed, you need to tell everybody. And then the cost of business disruption, which isn't just orders that you weren't able to fulfill, but also includes customers who simply walk, as well as damage to your business's reputation. What I'm sure won't be a surprise is that the largest cost tends to be the cost of lost business. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, if your security is breached, you have to work really hard to regain customer trust. Just think back to TalkTalk for a moment. When they had their incident, thousands of customers walked out the door, and their MD ended up in the firing line on News at 10. The total cost to their business was somewhere around £35 million. You also can't afford to ignore the impact that the arrival of the European General Data Protection Regulations could have when you try to estimate the potential future cost of a data breach. Even though we're leaving the EU, we will still be in it when the GDPR becomes law in May 2018. And under the GDPR, you can be fined up to 4% of your annual turnover if you're found to be negligent in your duty to protect personal data. Even after we do leave the EU, the indication from the ICO is that we will have equivalent legislation. So it's very unlikely that companies in the UK will be able to wriggle out of their obligations to protect customer data and report breaches to the ICO. So how do you go about getting on top of the problem? Well, you need to address how you detect and respond to threats within your network. The way things are, cybercriminals are finding it too easy to get through, and it's taking up to 6 months to detect a breach. You need to make it much harder for them to breach your security. Now, part of the solution could well involve adopting some of the more advanced tools available now that will allow you to automate your response to threats that you identify within your network. You can also start to adopt solutions that will allow you to see the bigger security picture by combining security information from across your network so that you can identify and respond to the breach more quickly and get back to business as usual as soon as possible. But technology by itself is only part of the answer. SIEM, for example, is a really great tool that gives you all of the information that you need to spot a threat on your network. But if you don't have the incident response and forensic skills to analyse the data and act on it properly, it can end up just being a very expensive tick in the box for compliance. And that's where the problem lies, because the sort of engineer that you need to investigate and respond to security incidents commands a very high salary these days. What's more, their skills are going to be underutilised in all but the largest companies, and so they get bored and move on to pastures new. That then puts pressure on your infrastructure and PC support teams who won't necessarily be security specialists, and that's bad for morale and increases your risk. And the reality is that it just doesn't make sense for you to employ your own team of security specialists when you're only making best use of their talents a handful of times a year. So how can we help? Well, if you can't justify £1 million investment in your own security operations centre, you can use ours. We offer a portfolio of managed security services that includes managed endpoint security, managed firewall, managed SIEM, and managed vulnerability scanning. We see these as being the 4 pillars of cybersecurity that you need to manage properly if you want to raise the bar on security to the point where you can identify threats on your network as quickly as possible and respond quickly to remediate those threats. From an operational point of view, by combining these technologies, when you experience a breach, you'll be able to see what's happened, which of your systems are vulnerable, how far the attack has spread, and what you need to do to put things right. What we offer is essentially an a la carte approach to managed security. You can pick the areas where you feel that you need additional help to support your infrastructure and help desk staff, and we'll tailor a package to suit you. Let's now take a look at the individual services. Endpoint security is now effectively your front line in cybersecurity. But we very often find that customers don't use all of the tools that are included in their endpoint subscriptions. Some organisations often won't use capabilities such as host intrusion prevention because of the management overhead involved. But if you outsource your endpoint security management to us, we can make sure that you get best value out of your investment in endpoint security. We will take all of the routine admin and cleanup tasks off your hands, and we can also help to reduce your exposure to ransomware. Managing your firewalls properly is also incredibly important because your firewall is your first line of defense in keeping the bad guys out. As well as responding to alerts, we will make sure that your firewall estate is managed in accordance with best security practices. And that includes procedures like making sure that configuration changes are backed up properly, and also making sure that the change that is made is the one that was actually requested. It's also important from a best practice point of view to audit your firewall rules from time to time so that you can get rid of rules that are no longer in use. SIEM is really the key to managing security in larger networks, and the latest SIEM systems don't just collect log files. They can also collate flow information from the routers on your network, and that's going to help you to spot outbound connections to malicious sites. But the real value in SIEM is in the correlation between events that it sees on your network that will tell you that you've got a problem. The sort of alerts that you want to look out for would be somebody logging into your network in London at 9 AM, but then connecting in via a VPN in Paris 10 minutes later. And SIEM can pick up those sorts of anomalies. The other really useful thing about SIEM is that it allows you to correlate the threat that it has seen together with vulnerability information on your internal network, as well as threats that currently exist on the internet. And this is what allows you to prioritize your response to alerts. To give you an example, let's say that you see something suspicious happening on your network. Well, you may initially just issue a yellow alert. But if the host that's affected is your HR system and it's missing a patch, and what's worse, it's just made a connection out to a known command and control site, you may want to go to red alert and scramble the incident response team. The problem that most people have with SIEM is in the incident response skills that you need to make sense of the alerts that come through. When we provide a 24/7 managed service, we have to get multiple engineers trained up to provide complete cover for when people are on holiday or off sick. And given that a fully trained incident response engineer can cost £70,000 to £80,000 a year to employ, it just doesn't make sense for most companies to make that sort of investment. And that's where we can deliver real value to companies who have to protect personal information. We provide 24/7 monitoring and incident triage, as well as incident response in the event that we detect a threat on your network. What comes back to you is verified security alerts together with recommended actions for remediation. The final managed service that we provide is a range of services around vulnerability scanning and forensics. As a baseline, we can scan your entire network on a schedule that we agree with you. The reports that are generated will provide you with a prioritised list of vulnerabilities for you to remediate, together with information on what needs to be done to bring the device back into compliance. There are also summary reports which allow you to see how we've been able to increase the level of security on your network over time. We also then have the ability to provide you with more specialised scanning for PCI compliance or discovery of personally identifiable information. In reality, we have a number of security specialists in our Security Operations Centre. And if you have any specific service requirements for security scanning, just ask and there's every chance that we'll be able to accommodate you. Now, because security is our business, we also have the right ITIL-based processes in place to deliver the right quality of service to you. And our SLAs are amongst the best in the industry. In most companies, we find that the engineer who looks after the firewalls could also be looking after the switches and routers, the wireless system, and potentially servers too. Equally, the person looking after endpoint security might be looking after an Office 365 migration, upgrading the company's PCs, or bringing in a new line of business application. These guys are busy, and most of them don't live and breathe security in the way that our SOC engineers do. Why not take security off their to-do list and make sure that your security is managed in line with best practices? And if you do come with us, we'll work with you to proactively manage your security so that you can improve your security posture over time. And every managed service contract we provide includes regular reviews of both the service and how we can help you to adapt to your changing security needs. The main operational advantage for you in delegating day-to-day management of your security to us is that your staff are better employed in supporting your business functions than in supporting the day-to-day operation of your security systems. We've made an investment in a security operations centre together with a team of specialist security engineers available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that simply doesn't make business sense for most organisations. What does make sense, however, is for you to take advantage of the investment that we've made to be able to provide better protection for your networks and data, and to be able to respond to threats on your network as quickly as possible so that you can get back to business as usual as soon as possible. From a business point of view, there are going to be all sorts of pressures on you to improve the protection that you provide for your networks and data over the next few years. As well as keeping systems up and running to support your business, those pressures will come both as a result of legislation as well as potentially from your clients who will want to make sure that any data that you hold on their behalf is protected properly. Where we fit in is that we can work with you as an extension of your IT team. We can plug any gaps that you have in protecting your networks and data with the people, processes and technology to make sure that the job is done properly. Thank you for taking interest in how Caretower can help you to manage your network and data security more efficiently. If you'd like more information, please send an email to info@caretower.com. Thank you.